Welcome to the Richmond Leadership Lab, featuring business and nonprofit leaders across Richmond, Virginia. Produced and hosted by Filmspire and BenX.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 3.
Episode 3.
Episode 3, which is Episode 15 in totality. My name is Christian Mosier, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Taylor Quinn.
Happy to be here.
And we co-host the Richmond Leadership Lab podcast. And we are really excited to bring to you another exciting guest that we have today. I would call him a friend of mine now. Tyler Hart, who is the president and CEO of Commonwealth Autism. Tyler, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
My first podcast.
First
Nice.
podcast ever.
We've got a few of those.
I know, I love it. I kind of like when it's like, first time. I imagine it's a different experience, especially when the walls, there's like no sound. I remember when I walked in here the first time, it was like no sound.
No sound. That's Richmond Podcast Studio. If you want to record a podcast, shameless plug.
Which Richmond
Soundproof.
Podcast Studio is bumping right now.
Bumping. We got a full day today in the studio. Other podcasts coming in and recording with us today, which is great. So
People want some good content.
podcast is taking off,
Yeah, I think you do a great job.
but it's not about us.
It's not. Today, it is about Tyler and Commonwealth Autism and some great leadership stories and lessons that we'll get into. But first, we love to kick it off, Tyler, and just hear a little bit about you. The first few minutes where you grew up in small town Virginia and go from there.
Yeah, I grew up in a one stoplight town, Victoria, Virginia, in Lunenburg County. Usually when I tell somebody that in Richmond, they don't know where that is. It's only about an hour away, hour south down 360. I joke, you go to the prisons and hang a left on 360. So you go about 3 prisons on the way to get there. But small town, my family had a farm there. I love going back there. It's very peaceful to me. And I still have great friends there. My wife is from Stafford, Virginia. And so, also an hour away. She never sees anybody that she recognizes in Richmond. I see people every time I go out that's from Southside. Mm-hmm. I think it's because we knew everybody. So my high school had, my graduating class had about 90 people in it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We all knew each other. We were all friends. It was just a really neat experience growing up.
Yeah.
Graduated from high school, went to Longwood in Farmville, so stayed in Southside Virginia.
Yeah. Very popular track.
Met my wife, Maylee, in my senior year. We actually lived on the same hall sophomore year in the same dorm and never met.
Really?
So we had different
Wow.
crowds, different things.
And Longwood's not that big.
No.
This is very, very
Yeah.
small. But senior year, a mutual friend of ours introduced us, and we started dating and got married soon after graduation. So
Awesome.
after that, I was working in a bank, actually as a management trainee right out of college for about 6 months. And then we got engaged and we're getting ready to get married. So we said we're going to move to Richmond because it was kind of the midway point between us. So I started working. I got a job and started working. And it was January of 2004. And I was a tax accountant. So I went straight into a tax season. I was a business major in college. Thought I was going to be, go down that path, public accounting. I was going to be a tax accountant my whole career. Made it through 5 tax seasons and decided that was not what I wanted to do anymore. And started
a good
looking
amount,
for.
though.
Yeah. It was. I joke it's. I think my career. I think of it in dog years. So like everything is amplified everywhere I've been. So and the tax seasons were definitely that way. But yeah, so I did that for 5 years. Great experience. Met really cool businesses through that process. I'm still connected with many of the people. I actually brought my old boss, and it was the CPA at the CPA firm. He's our treasurer now for Commonwealth Autism. So
Oh, really? Full
so
circle.
still
Wow.
connected to many of the people that I met, and that was kind of my first experience working with small businesses, and
Yeah.
kind of the entrepreneurial itch I think started then when I was in that role. Went from there into higher ed, pivoted, was doing financial aid at Richmond College. So I ended up spending 15 years doing a bunch of different roles at Richmond College, which is down in Petersburg. did enrollment for the majority of the time there, was director of enrollment, dean of enrollment, and then ultimately was in fundraising for a little while, knowing that I wanted to kind of go into the nonprofit space. And then when I left there, I was the provost. So I really did do pretty much everything there.
Everything on the back end. When I was doing some research on you, we had a couple things in common. Obviously, Southside Virginia, right? But also that management training program you took was Benchmark Community Bank.
That's correct.
Which was my internship, my sophomore year of college. My first legit job, I would say, or internship, like 40-hour a week, right, job, was Benchmark Community Bank. And I was just like a floating teller. I'd go to different branches. And I don't know why they trusted me to trust people with their money, I guess. But it's a great bank, great people. I still know a couple people from that bank. And they have good values and good people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
for sure.
I was talking with Tyler earlier before we were recording because we have a higher ed connection because I worked at CNU where I went, Christopher Newport.
That's right.
Right. So I worked there as the assistant to the president at the time, Paul Tribble, and worked in that. So we've got that higher ed experience. I went on a lot of admissions tours too, and my favorite story was they had like fellows. Alumni, like people who graduated like with me. So I graduated in 2013, and they take a few fellows to stay on next year and do some different things. So, but I was pulled in for that specific role for the president at the time. But I'd go on admission things because Paul Tripp would always speak at all the admission things and stuff like that, and they'd have some of the fellows speak as well about their story at CNU and things like that. But the funny thing was that the fellows who were in admissions like were practicing for weeks and weeks on their talk, and then our first admission thing I'll never forget in Charlottesville, President Tribble goes, "Mr. Quinn, are you ready? You're going to be speaking tonight in front of everyone." It's like, seriously? He's like, "Yep, you're going to go up with the other fellows and have 5 minutes to go up basically in front of 300 people and speak basically about your admissions experience." And what a wild ride. I did pull together. Thank you for that public speaking class in college, which helped a lot. So
thrown to the fire.
So it sounds like your whole life has been around small communities, tight-knit communities, and small businesses and things like that. Like, why do you feel like that's resonated with you so much?
I don't know. I think again, I'm always learning, like a continuous learner. Like I always want to learn more.
Yeah.
You were joking about that earlier, but really that I'm hungry to learn. I always want to learn more, and I think being in higher ed, that really fueled that. I went on and got my master's while I was working, so I was working full time. I did my MBA at Richard Bland through Averett, and then I went on to the Community College Leadership PhD program through Old Dominion. So I worked full time and got both my master's and PhD. And as I was doing my dissertation and kind of studying for that and preparing for that and doing research, really just resonated with entrepreneurship. And so always being in nonprofits, or mostly being in nonprofits, higher ed, community college, junior college, it's a nonprofit, right? It's a state agency. And then how do you take a cause and put business acumen and practice around that? And that's really what drives me, I think. And so as I landed at Commonwealth Autism as the CEO, Commonwealth Autism was looking for a leader that was not necessarily in the autism space, because most nonprofits have a lot of passion, right? How do you take that passion and then put a business model around it that can drive sustainability and impact? And that's really kind of what I've tried to do in my career, wherever I've been.
It's almost like meshing both worlds, the passion and the mission of over here with like, how do we run this sustainably?
Right. How does a college in my dissertation learn from the for-profit world and create processes and practices that can, generate impact and sustainability ultimately over and over again, is really that. I mean, there was really 4 pillars of my research, and that was, you have to step back and look at the business model. Like, what is your business model and what are you trying to get? What is your goal? You can't do it by yourself. You have to create partnerships. You need to diversify revenue. Like, if you have one revenue stream, you're in trouble, right? Like, you need to be able to diversify revenue. If something that is out of your control happens to one of those revenue streams, you need to have something to fall back on. And then the last thing was just creating change culture within your organization.
So tell us a little bit more about Commonwealth Autism, the organization as a whole. So I guess you joined it 3.5-ish years ago, somewhere around
August
there.
of 2022. So when I started at Commonwealth Autism, we were coming out of COVID. Commonwealth Autism has been innovative and entrepreneurial over the years under different leaders. We had merged with some other nonprofits at different points in time. We had programs where we were doing ABA training in schools. We had at one point we had a school that was similar to what like Faison does. It was a preschool, but we were running that. There was a nonprofit called the Richmond House, which owned a residence over near Willow Lawn, which was it was not a group home. It was transitional housing for autistic adults. That was kind of merged with Commonwealth Autism, so we ran that for a while. And when I came in, we had a really strong balance sheet, but a lot of the programming had kind of dried up, sunset. Hard to find the right words for that, but we were very reliant on one grant that we were getting at that time, and there was a real need to kind of diversify, reinvent, relaunch the nonprofit. When Commonwealth Autism was formed, again, we exist to fill gaps in the autism world. There was not a lot of other nonprofits in that space. Over the 30 years, you have the Autism Society of Central Virginia, you have autism societies in other parts of the state. There's other nonprofits that have kind of popped up and are meeting some of that need. What does it look like for us as a statewide agency organization to support those organizations versus trying to, exist or coexist with them with similar programming and that kind of thing? And so coming in 2022, strong balance sheet, not a lot of revenue coming in, no diversity of revenue, 85% coming from one source. Never really.
And that was
hit,
a grant?
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha.
One grant. And then never really having to rely on fundraising. My background was fundraising. Yeah. How do you do this? Well, you're coming in as a startup. You don't have a donor list that you can fall back on. And so one of the first things I did, and a previous CEO of Commonwealth Autism was on the search committee that hired me, and I met with him, and I asked at that time, I had remembered the Positive Vibe Cafe, which was in Forest Hill. It had existed. I didn't know at the time that it wasn't operational in 2022. And I just asked John Toscano, the previous CEO who was on the search committee, I said, do you know anybody that had anything to do with this? And he said, Garth Larson. And that day I reached out to him on Facebook. I found him on Facebook. That was the only place I could find him. And we connected just to talk about like social enterprise was the idea. Like, you had a business that you were running, but it had a cause that was front and center. How did you do that? And then from there, we kind of, fast forward, the thought was, okay, we have this residence that's for sale. It's worth about $500,000. We're going to sell it. We'll invest that into a coffee shop of some sort. We'll do something very similar to what the Positive Vibe was, and we'll go from there. So, we were looking at like business listings and, what are we going to do once we sell this house? And then fast forward, come across the Good Foods grocery listing. Donnie Caffrey had started Good Foods similar about 5 years before Commonwealth Autism actually launched as a natural foods grocery store right in Bon Air. I remember the day that I came across it, before I even submitted an inquiry, I reached out to Garth and I said, Garth, this is similar to what we've been talking about, but it's a grocery store. Is this crazy? Like, what are you thinking? And he said, if you're trying to get me to talk you out of it, you called the wrong person. And so, fast forward from that, we ended up closing on Good Foods, the purchase of Good Foods, August of 2023. So a year after I started, we now had a grocery store that was doing about $5.2 million in sales, had 60 employees. Wow. And I had never been in the retail space. Yeah. So it was like brand new. But Donnie was going to be sticking around. Donnie, the owner, was going to be sticking around for about a year, and he was going to train us on how we do this. And we were going to launch a training program. We launched the training program in January of 2024. We've now graduated 7 cohorts. 30% of the workforce at Good Foods is neurodiverse, so they've graduated from our program, and now they're permanently employed. typically, 25 to 30 hours a week. We have about an 85% placement rate in total. A lot of that has been at Good Foods, but we do have some other employer partners where we've had our graduates go. And the sales in the store have grown from 5.2 when we purchased to we'll do 8 million this year.
Wow.
Low margins in retail.
Yeah.
But, once you get the kind of snowball rolling downhill, it's hard to mess it up.
For
so
sure.
we're hoping we can keep it rolling in the right direction.
Keep the inventory, keep the people happy.
Right.
Before we go further, can you just tell us, you've told us the evolution of Commonwealth over the years, but today, what is the mission of Commonwealth Autism? What do you do? Who do you serve, and things like that?
So we serve the state of Virginia, and we exist to fill gaps in the autism space. So unemployment is one of those gaps. So it's 85% unemployment rate amongst autistic adults. I've seen 60, I've seen 85, I've seen 90. So it varies, right? And in some autistic adults, they may not be able to independently work, right? So so it's never going to get to a perfect number. But it can be a lot better than even 60%. What can we do to fix that? So that I'd say that's our primary program now. So it's generating revenue, and we're putting autistic adults to work. Outside of that, Good Foods is a revenue engine for us to hopefully fund and solve some other problems around the state. So an example of that would be information and resources. So if you look across at any nonprofit that in the disability world, they almost all have some sort of information and resources arm.
Yeah.
What does an individual do when they get an autism diagnosis? If they need to get an assessment, where do they go? Who do they call? Well, they're going to find one of those resources, and whoever answers the phone or is not on vacation historically would be who would help them through that process. So we had a very similar process. We had our own program. As we kind of went through this, transformation of the nonprofit, we were trying to shift to where we're supporting the community versus trying to be a provider of those services. So we're now partnering with other nonprofits to offer us a strategic and systematic information and resources platform. So we we actually outsourced that program to other nonprofits. So we're funding those services through the community. Yeah. So I think we reinvented ourselves as kind of a capacity builder in the community versus a provider.
Yeah, that's great.
So there's the employment gap, right? The information gap. Who does someone call? Are there any other gaps you all are trying to fill?
Education. I think those are probably the three pillars.
Got it.
Education, not just of the neurodiverse community, but education of the neurotypical community on what it means to work with and to live with and to do life with someone with autism.
Yeah. Wow. Getting into, I'd love to kind of get into your leadership overall and things like that. Kind of going back to when you first started at Commonwealth Autism, you're just kind of coming out of COVID. They've had a long evolution of things, of different ways that they've looked over the years, things like that. What was your first 6 months? What did that look like for you? You were obviously were you identifying needs, problems? You identified just there's the one grant, we need to diversify. What did your first 6 months look like in terms of assessing where Commonwealth Autism is and where we need to be, basically? What did that look like for you as a leader?
So I think it was really stepping back and looking at the business model, the landscape. We were getting this grant, which was almost like a target on our back, right? It's what are they doing that why don't we get that same grant? Or
you're saying other agencies would look at you, other autism organizations.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right.
So almost like a competitor to the other. It was how they viewed it.
Yeah, it's a finite resource mentality, right? So we have X resources. We all need to fight to get our biggest share for that resource. And I say that in with love, right?
Yeah,
it's
but with state funding and it's a very real thing.
Yeah. And so, instead of we all are fundraising, we're going to the same donors. Like, who in the autism world can give us money that we can then have impact, because we can do it better than anybody else can. And, you know, my mentality really looking at it was like, let's step back from this and say, like, what are we trying to get in the long run? Like, how do we bring more resources to the table? What does that look like? How do we bring non-autism dollars into this autism space? Because we just want to have impact, and community impact. And so I think that was kind of the biggest shift. It was to say, like, how do we attract new dollars versus fighting over what's here?
Right.
Or almost turn the other organizations into, how do we fill their cup up a little bit?
Exactly. And build capacity, because they're doing good work.
Right.
So like, how do we amplify that work?
Partner?
Yeah.
So it sounds like a big part of the first 6 to 12 months was like, how do we almost form partnerships, I guess, to a certain degree?
Yeah, but I'd say it was more than that, because there's a lack of trust, right? So like, how do you start to build trust amongst the community that is fighting for resources? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does. What it doesn't, apples to apples apply. But one of my favorite quotes in business is, you build a brand in drops, but you lose it in buckets. And I'm like, wow. It's just, that's such a great quote, because, it's the day-to-day and the consistency, and like, you can't build trust with all these organizations in a month or 3 months or even 6 months, right? It takes years, and it takes drops, that one drop at a time.
Yeah.
Were you all impacted by the grant cutbacks and things like that?
We were not.
That? Okay.
So, but I mean, that's a real threat. Like, we're at the state level, the federal, it wouldn't take much for that to push down, right? Like, and we weren't, the organization wasn't impacted, but the community was impacted, right, with Medicaid dollars, and the state having to kind of make up gaps in Medicaid funding. Yeah.
Was it a big culture change when you came on board, and it was 85% was coming from this grant? Hey, now we're going to look at buying a grocery store, and now we're going to try to diversify.
So yes,
we're bringing in just a business mentality to the nonprofit space and things like that.
Yes. I think, I don't want to say this like, I'm going to speak in generalities, but when you have a cause or a passion, sometimes that can be a crutch on like, it doesn't matter. Like, we don't have to be efficient, because, we're doing good work, right? Like, it's, I've used the term nonprofit mentality, and I love this world, right? And it's my world, but it's you lean kind of on your values, right? And if the bank account's empty, then you're, we had built up at Commonwealth Autism had built up this huge reserve. Like, I was told when I was hired, we could operate for 3 years without bringing in another dime. Well, what are we doing impact-wise if we can do that, right? So we can't do that now, I can tell you. Right? Like, so like, we stepped out on a little bit of faith and a little bit of, you have to be willing to take some risk in order to justify impact, or to grow impact.
Yeah.
Right.
And a board, convincing your board of that is not always easy, right?
Right.
So it can be a little tricky.
Yeah.
One of the things that's interesting, I think, about nonprofits and associations and just organizations that have boards, is how you manage or think through the board, right? Because you have a strategic board, you have people that, and how many people are on your board?
We have 10 board members now. We were at 9, we have 10 now.
Got you. So you have 10 people that are essentially your boss, right? That help with the strategic, overview of the organization. But then you also have the own culture of the employees and leadership. How do you manage that intersection of, like, you're the leader of these employees, but obviously you have a board? Like, I'm always so curious how leaders navigate board conversations.
So I think it depends on your board. It depends on your leader.
Yeah.
It's our board consisted of basically, business leaders, retired people, but they all had a very strong connection to autism in some way. They had a child with autism. They had, we are actually going to recruit a self-advocate to be on our board. We don't currently have that, and we've identified that as a gap. but we didn't have kind of business leaders. It was more of we have a passion, and they're very much like some nonprofit boards are very hands-on. They're doing some of the work. This is more of a directional board,
a strategic board,
strategic board,
operations board, I guess.
But we had a gap. We identified that we had a gap in kind of the entrepreneurship space. Like we don't have business people that understand that here's your problem. And here's how you're strategically going to solve that problem. And so we started to bring in, we brought in the treasurer who is a CPA and he's got that kind of business mindset. We brought on a marketing person. We brought on an HR person. Don't have any connection to autism. It's personal relationship and they like the impact that we're having.
Right.
I mean, we're running this board of parents of autistic families are now running a grocery store, right? Like, so it's like you got to have a little bit of that, understanding of business to make that work. And so we're shaping our board in that way.
Yeah. That's great. We'll be right back after this short message.
Are employee benefits a headache for your company? At BenX, we simplify benefits so you can focus on growing your business. From custom benefit solutions to cutting-edge technology, we make it easy for companies to take care of their teams. Visit BenXConsulting.com to see how we can simplify benefits for your growing company.
Your story is powerful, but is it reaching the right audience? At Filmspire, we create compelling videos and provide marketing strategies to make sure they drive real results. From crafting your message to amplifying it, we help you connect with your audience like never before. Ready to inspire? Let's tell your story.
And now, back to the show. Is there a particular moment that stands out recently that you're super proud of, like that you guys went through, or a victory that you guys were really happy you guys celebrated, or anything like that?
One of our graduates, his name is Loudon Arthur. He recently, so we have an Employee of the Month process, and he was recently awarded our employee. I think it's by month. He was the Employee of the Month for us, and that was a kind of have an employee that talks about fill your cup moments.
Yeah.
And to see that was really cool. We tried to do our day of giving a little different this year, and so we had staff from Commonwealth Autism in the store, like bagging groceries and things like that, on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, which is a busy time in retail. And at one point, I was bagging groceries, talking to customers, and we had 4 registers open. Again, it was really busy. All 4 were either staffed by an intern or a graduate. So it was really neat to see. So
it must be really cool because this podcast focuses on leadership in some ways, but what you're doing is empowering people, and almost to become leaders themselves, basically, like empowering them to have jobs and work and find meaning in work and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've always had a program around independence and community support.
Right.
So like we try to empower autistic adults to live independently. We will help them find an apartment and get out on their own. And through this career readiness and employment program, we found that we can do all those other things, but until someone has kind of the purpose of work, it doesn't, like, there's not a lot of motivation behind that. They have found community in work, and that has driven these other programs. So like, when we do a game night, before we'd have, 2 or 3 people that would show up, and now it's like they're with their people and they're all coming back in to go to that game night and that kind of thing, which is really neat to see.
Heck yeah, what are the games?
We do a lot of board games.
Hold on.
Lots of board games.
Yeah.
Monopoly? Are we talking Monopoly?
Ping pong. We have a ping pong table in our office, and yes, I think Monopoly has been played. So
yeah. One of the things I'm curious, Tyler, is especially since you came on board with almost I would say a different way of thinking. Let's say, how do you balance innovation versus like efficiencies? Meaning, like, how do you balance like, hey, we have a ton of ideas, right? But obviously we can't implement all these ideas next month or even next year. How do you balance or pick almost like where do we innovate and where do we hunker down on our efficiencies, systems, that type of thing?
I think everybody's wired differently. And we implemented the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, at the organization. And that says if you have a visionary, you need to have an integrator to kind of counterbalance that. So hiring the right people, I'd say, is the most critical thing to do within that. You need to hire to your weaknesses. And so like I can come up with 1,000 ideas. I have somebody to filter those through, and that's been a great partnership with Sally Ann Harrell, Sally Ann Grant now, our COO.
Oh, so, nice. Are you guys using an implementer or anything like that?
We are. We use Dave Ingram here in Richmond.
Cool. Yeah. Nice. Shout out EOS.
Yeah.
We have a good amount of clients that run on EOS, and it's it seems to be a really good system for certain organizations. When did you guys implement?
I think the biggest thing is that I would say from that is having a system, right? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be EOS, but like having a structure that you're leaning on is critical.
Yeah.
And I would certainly endorse EOS, but there's other systems that you can use. But just having something that it might feel rote or like tedious to go through the process, but once you really embrace it, it can really help your organization.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And the system, it reminds me, I was laughing because that reminds me of a funny joke with Pardon My Take. I was listening to Pardon My Take's podcast a couple months ago when the NFL season ended. And I think the Bills just like spot fired their head coach at the end of the season, or like literally like the next day after they lost. And Bills fans were really upset. And the guys at Pardon My Take were like, the problem was they didn't have a process for firing the coach. It didn't matter what the process was.
Right.
If they would have went to Bills Mafia and said, look, we went through our internal process and we decided that we're going in a different direction. But it was a very emotional press conference, and you could tell there was just a spot decision on the process. Like, I don't care if it's just taking 8 tequila shots at a bar. Like you need to have a process.
Yeah.
And lean on it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Have some forethought. As Susan Quinn said last podcast, hope is not a strategy, so you got to have something in place and data and information to kind of make all those decisions. And
how long have you guys ran on EOS? When
I came into Commonwealth Autism, we were operating on EOS, but we were kind of half baked, and so we kind of moved away from it. And I had brought in a new leadership team, and as we kind of had transformed, it was like we're missing something here, and so we kind of went back to that and integrate and implement it with an implementer, and so we were about a year and a half,
gotcha,
almost 18 months into.
Was
that
it tough
process.
to get leadership buy-in at all?
Ish, I would say. It was. It's different for every person on our leadership team.
Sure.
But I think having a structure is so critical, and even the folks that were kind of frustrated with it, I think on the front end have kind of bought into like, okay, it's not going away, and so I just need to make sure I have my stuff,
my
together.
rocks. We gotta have the rocks.
Yeah, and we're really operating two businesses.
I was about
separately,
to say,
and so
they're not combined, right? They're completely separate.
Ish. Say again. So like our core values go across the organization. How does Good Foods staff support the mission is through revenue generation and employment. So it's really that's the connector, but Good Foods has its own thing. It's a health food store, clean ingredients. It's different products. It's you don't want to. It's not just a employment center for autistic adults. It's it's its own thing. So
wow, how do you balance that? Because that's
been the hardest
part.
They're
like different. They're the same, but they're different total models, different entities to degrees, and similar brands, but different brands to a degree. I could imagine.
I think we're still figuring it out to some degree. We're leaning on the story, and we're force feeding a story. So our marketing strategy is that we're this community asset, and we're doing neurodiverse training, right? We want to bring in customers because we're doing good in the community, and you can see it when you walk through the doors, right? Like your cashier is going to have autism. Like you can feel it.
It's a really cool store.
tangible.
I will say that to his point, we met maybe 9 months ago, 9 months ago or something at the grocery store. And that was the first time that I've been in it.
Yeah.
It was a really cool vibe in there. Obviously it's a natural foods, more of a health grocery store, but also at a cafe, right? They have like coffee
Oh,
and
cool.
you can
Nice,
get
yeah.
like, different, I think, sandwiches, right?
Yeah, grab and go deli,
Yep.
full service deli. So you can have lunch there.
Have coffee there, have
Yeah.
lunch there, and there's a couple
We
employees.
now have
I remember.
sushi.
Yeah,
So
Sushi, look at
fresh
that.
sushi delivered daily. It's been a big seller for us. So.
you guys actually cutting it, or it's being
No,
delivered?
no. We
Yeah,
have
it's
a
like,
vendor,
dang.
vendor guaranteed, so we get guaranteed margin on it. So.
Nice.
It's like,
But you were going on
dang.
about the story. Like, how are you guys like what is your marketing strategy looking like? How are you guys using storytelling and things like that?
So I think we had a mindset shift right at the beginning of the year in partnering with Channel 6, who's been a great partner of ours,
yeah.
and kind of doing advertising around, the first of the year is kind of a dead time health food store. We want people to come through the door. Like the goal was sales and good foods, right? Before that, I think we were leaning on like, we are Commonwealth Autism. Oh, by the way, we have a grocery store. And so the shift was, we're a grocery store. Oh, by the way, look at this great cause that we are as well.
Go.
And so like we're still trying to kind of figure that out, but Good Food stands alone, and we need to lean into that.
Right.
And so we're still again working through that, because we don't. For us, Good Foods doesn't exist if we don't have the training program, right? Like, it's not just a revenue engine; it has to be mission aligned. But for our shoppers, they may be coming because we have unique products, we have local products.
Right.
There's a whole nother marketing strategy for Good Foods than it is for.
But what a great
CSI.
way, though, for the public to get in and connected with not just Good Foods, but Commonwealth Autism as well, basically. Because otherwise,
and educated on
educated,
neurodiversity, right?
Like,
the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges we face is that there's a lack of understanding of, 1 in 31 individuals has autism. So you're dealing with people with autism, whether you know it or not. It doesn't mean they're less. It doesn't mean it just means they think differently, right? Like they might process things differently. So how do we educate the community on, what that looks like? And we have graduates and interns that are extremely social in the store, and we have some that are, they really struggle with eye contact.
Yeah.
They're both the same, right? Like, it's just like you need to understand them. It's not that they don't want to respect you, or they're mad, or they're, it's that that's how they're processing information. And, so we're educating customers as we do that.
Yeah. Yeah. But, which is great, because otherwise, like, without that branch, without that wing of the Good Foods Grocery, it's like, how else do we get the general public and our community to interact with that, this group of adults and things like that. So it's this beautiful organic marketing tool to a degree, I could see, of just like, this is like how we are interfacing with the world and the public, and providing these opportunities for these adults to have a meaningful work and employment. But also, it is a great way for the Richmond community to be rubbing shoulders literally with people with autism and things like that. So I can see that also it fills in with the mission of Commonwealth Autism as well.
And one of the things that you asked earlier about moments of pride, we've had our employees say that, working at Good Foods feels like they're at home. They finally fit in somewhere.
Wow.
And it's not unique for someone with autism to feel like they don't fit in to a community. And so, like, the confidence level from someone coming in, on day one when they're nervous, but they're with other people that are similar, and then kind of going through this cohort process, and now they're in a place that's very accepting and understanding of their differences. The confidence level goes through the roof. We've had 3 of our students go on and get driver's, like 23, 25-year-old kids that had never driven, didn't have a purpose. Now they have a driver's license, right? Like, one of those metrics that you didn't expect. That's like, it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
There's just something about the power of work and like
Purpose.
the purpose and I think we've been made to work and like created to work and have meaningful work and things like that. And so that's just such an amazing gift to have for for anyone, and especially those adults in that community.
And we talked about education earlier. I mean, I'd say the education piece is really the neurotypical community. Like you go into
Right.
employers and having an understanding of, we had to experience it with Good Foods because the staff at Good Foods, they were forced into this kind of partnership, right?
Yeah.
Liking, they like it,
Yeah.
but like, they don't understand the neurodiverse community. Although we had employees already that have now identified as being on the spectrum that were already working there, right? But you're educating people around. Okay, we have an intern that gets overstimulated on a 4-hour shift. They need about a 30-minute cooling down period, right? Well, the policy is you get a 15-minute break in a 4-hour shift. Okay, well, they're willing to come in 15 minutes early, stay 15 minutes late. They're going to give us 15 minutes, but they just need extra time in the middle. Oh, well, that's reasonable, right? Like, so like that's a reasonable accommodation.
Right.
So it's, our job coaches a lot of times are just kind of negotiating that, translating the needs to people that don't quite understand.
Go back to the staff that was already there and now being brought in with this new group of people and things like that. What did that look like? I feel like there's probably some gold nuggets there. Just like, what was that look like?
I mean, we were creating a new culture, and a culture that didn't necessarily need to be like, it was a successful store.
Yeah.
It was already doing well. Like, why are we don't want to lose the identity of who we are, but now we have this new flavor of it.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the hardest things. It's like, there's a constant tension between, the profit business acumen drive and the cause, right? So, and at some points the cause is higher and the business side needs to take a back seat. And then there's other times when the cause needs to take a back seat and the business needs to drive it. And, they're figuring out that tension, I think, is the biggest challenge that we will face as we go forward. It's a moving target. So it's, you're never going to settle on where that is. It's always going to be some tension there, and it's going to be, going, it's on a spectrum, right? Like it's going one way or the other at all times.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. That's really cool.
How do you recommend other nonprofits get into more of the for-profit space? Like, for example, I know some churches get into, coffee shops, thrift stores. There's certain nonprofits that, not a ton, but some. Do you recommend more nonprofits get into the for-profit world?
Yes, I think. Well, let me back up. I think more nonprofits need to learn from business. It might not always fit, right? Sure. Like, again, strictly as to diversify our revenue, did it make sense for us to purchase Good Foods? Maybe not, right? Like we're earning 8% on our revenue, right? But we could have kept it in the stock market and an endowment and not had to do anything with it. You can stay in operation for 3 years with no risk, right? Like, but are you going to have the impact from that?
So it's really the tie, like the employment tie and
a growth mindset, right? It's what we are doing is not good enough. We need to do more. And being willing to take risk within that is something that I think is a gap in the nonprofit world.
How do you manage that growth mindset? Meaning, like, because I imagine there's certain people in every organization or, that don't quite have the same growth mindset. And so having, I guess, maybe a good leadership team or having structure.
I think that's the biggest thing is to set a clear vision and then have people that kind of keep you from going in the ditch. Yeah. Again, going back to that kind of integrator role and making sure that every idea is not a good idea. You may have one in there.
No joke.
Make sure you don't go too fast.
Yeah.
How do you define success for your for the people who are on staff with Commonwealth Autism and like your core team, like KPIs or like their growth plan? So I'm curious. So two-part that, and then how do you define that for your adults at the store, or your adults with autism? Like, what does their growth plan, their trajectory, success plan kind of like look like
So I will speak. It's different for interns versus employees.
Okay.
An employee needs to have a metric, and it needs to be tied to the vision of the organization, not that individual. Like it has to be business first.
Yeah.
People second. And we have this conversation all the time because we have a lot of people first culture in our organization, and I think that's a good thing. The people don't exist without the business. So like what's best for the people, might mean, like if you're looking people first, you might make decisions that are going to be different than if you're looking business, strategy, growth.
If we don't have the
first.
business, we won't have the people. So
exactly, you can't have. You need both.
Yeah,
and so
because if
like,
you don't have the people,
that?
you don't have the business.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like a light bulb going off right now. But like that is that tension I was talking about earlier of you
needing both.
Yeah, you have to have this drop. You have to have that tension, and again. There are times when the people first needs to be elevated, and there's times when the business first needs to be elevated.
Yeah, yeah. And so then, what does that look like then for like the adults with autism, and like what is their like, how do we take you from this level to the next level, or things like that, or and that kind of stuff? Does it get really tailored and individualized to every person and where they are and their needs and things like that?
Dan, one of my employees that kind of oversees the retail side, he's been in retail his whole career and is brilliant. He talks about how, as we've done training around autism, he's like, that's everybody. Everybody has these same needs, like, right? So, like, it's making sure you're supporting everybody with what they need, whether they have autism or not, right? We're better at supporting the autistic employees than we are the one that are just having, a bad month and, like retail is a hard space, right? Like it's long hours, it's busy, you're on your feet, it can be challenging. And so like, how do we support each employee with their needs is really how we try to focus.
Gotcha.
So really, no matter what, it just goes back to the servant leadership.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's really
cool. One of my favorite questions to ask guests is if, and I guess for you, let's do 3.5 years. So if you know everything that you know today, and you were talking to Tyler Hart right here, and he, he's just starting with Commonwealth Autism, what would you, knowing what you know today, what are a couple pieces of advice that you would give him?
So I think to lead well, you have to be opportunistic. And I think we've done that very well. I think looking back on it, I should have tried to raise more of the dollars. Like our model now is like we can raise startup capital. Like I have people that are interested in the model, right? Like so if we were going to open another location somewhere, I think I could get the funding to do that. Like I can find the funding to do that because it's new, it's exciting. And then we can sustain ourselves. So we used a lot of our reserve to kind of to create a model. And so like it puts us in a little more of a vulnerable position. Things are going well, but like at the same time, like, there's a Whole Foods opening, 5 miles down the road. How's that going to impact sales?
Oh, yeah.
What's that going to look like? Yeah. So like, we're addressing those things as we're going, but like we're not as, again, I told you we can't operate for 3 years now without any revenue coming in, right? Like we have a more sustainable organization that is more vulnerable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if I answered your question or not, but,
no,
but I think
does.
that's what, like, maybe, we've also bought a building as we went through this process. So like, would have waited on that and done that as a phased approach.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Sure. So kind of looking to the future, like what's on the roadmap? What's the next 5 years looking like for Commonwealth Autism and things like that?
So as I said, we're a statewide organization. I would like to be able to replicate what we're doing here in Richmond and other places. So like we've identified Charlottesville's target market for us. There's a gap in autism services. We're close partners with the Autism Society. What does it look like for us to expand services, but also social enterprise into Charlottesville? 5 years, I would like to think that we would have more than one, additional location with the model of social enterprise.
What's the next one? Coffee shop? Grocery store again?
It's interesting that you asked that. I think people wiser than me have told me that just because it worked in retail and grocery doesn't mean it's going to work in everything. Like if you had asked just me this, I would say we're like a private equity firm and we have 20 different businesses that we're operating. That are all employing people with autism, but also generating revenue for the cause, and we're the kind of engine that's driving this whole nonprofit community. I think my operator would say, let's open a store and prove we can do this twice, and go from there. So I think it's probably a smaller scale of what we're doing in Richmond. Our bulk section is really strong. So like maybe there's a model where we just do bulk to start with in a smaller footprint. A few retail, bulk and frozen, that kind of thing.
Nice.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, should we wrap up with some fun stuff?
I love fun stuff.
Some things like that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
One of our go-to questions, just kind of getting to know you, Tyler, a little bit is, well, I like it. Like if you weren't doing this, you weren't doing Commonwealth Autism, you're just doing something totally different, maybe some other life you were doing this kind of job, what would you be doing instead?
So it's a great question. I think I would be an entrepreneur if if resources were unlimited.
Sure, yeah.
Like I often talk about.
Yeah, right.
As an entrepreneur,
I often think about I feel I'm an entrepreneur, but I've never actually owned my own business, right? Like I've always worked for a board, and I think there's room for that with a B Corp type. Like you can still have impact and with a profit mindset. Like where's the balance within that? I think I would be some sort of entrepreneur. So
that's awesome. Good answer.
I think Red Orange Studios, shout out Susie. I think they're a B Corp.
Yes, yeah, they are. They are B
so.
Corp. Yeah. I think there's a couple in town too. Yeah.
I when I'm describing what we do, I often will say you have a B Corp that is for profit with a cause. We're a cause with a for profit.
For profit. Nice.
We're kind of backwards
like
of the B Corp. So
what? We were speaking of restaurants still before we started the podcast. But what is one or two of if it's date night or special occasion? What are a couple restaurants in Richmond that you all love to frequent?
I have 3 young kids.
Yep.
So
a little tougher.
Chick-fil-A.
Which location? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Raising Cane's. Yeah. It's always involves chicken nuggets or chicken tenders.
Yeah.
But,
nothing wrong with that.
I think my wife and I, we really like going to kind of hole in the wall. We'll go one time and not go back. So
just trying new places.
Right.
Is there a couple you remember recently that you enjoyed? Any specific place?
I really can't think. Again, 3 kids. It's been a while.
What is date night? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm trying.
We usually go to a date night for us. We'll go to the dine-in movie theater in Chester and eat and go to the movie at the same time. So it's
Two
efficiency,
birds
right?
At once. Yeah, exactly.
Nothing wrong
That's
with
actually
that.
a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to Blue Outlets later tonight, like I said, so I'm excited. We'll see how that is. I've always wanted to go the first time.
Yeah, we do have an event coming up called the Chef's Cook-Off, so I should be shouting out some of our chefs from Don't Look Back is one of them. Victoria's Kitchen, which is I think a school. Anyway, that's coming up on April 16th, so get your tickets.
Where's it at?
It's going to be at the Altria Theater this year.
Cool.
So April 16th? Cool. What day is that?
That's a Thursday evening.
Thursday. That's exciting.
Yeah, would you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, we can post that in the show. Well, we always like to, shout out nonprofits on the show and have guests come on and tell us about a nonprofit that they want to shout out because we make a small donation to that specific nonprofit. So I think it makes sense to give to Commonwealth Autism.
We would certainly appreciate that. I was going to say that.
Yeah.
That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, exactly. Is there a nonprofit?
If it can't be
support-
mine,
yeah.
I would say one of our partners.
Yeah,
there you
the
go.
Autism Society.
Yes,
So.
absolutely. How can people get involved?
So if you go to commonwealthautism.org, our website, we do have some volunteer opportunities and different things like that. You can also make donations. We do need donations to operate diversified revenue. So we get money from the store. You can shop at Good Foods. That's an easy way to get involved. Is just to come to a local. We're the only independent natural foods grocery store in the city now. And so
because they sold.
Elwood's
they're
is
gone.
public.
Well, yeah, we're not gone.
They're still
but
there.
Yeah, they did sell. Yeah, yeah.
So check us out. I mean, it's a really cool space.
And that's in Bon Air.
Mhm.
Where is it exactly for people to find it?
It's in the old Stony Point Shopping Center, corner of Huguenot and Forest Hill. People always ask me, Trader Joe's is in the same shopping center as us, and they're like, "Oh, how's that hurt you?" And it does not hurt. So people come across the river for Trader Joe's.
They stop by
and
you?
not for many other things. And we have complimentary products to
about
Trader
to say,
Joe's.
yeah.
So it's they're a good thing for us.
Cool.
So we're right next door. So, so if you go to Trader Joe's, come on by and check us
Pop on
out.
by.
At least for sushi.
And they don't have fresh sushi.
I mean,
right?
yeah,
sushi.
And the bare minimum, sushi and a coffee.
Local produce, fresh sushi.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's
If you haven't checked it out, it's a really cool spot.
Yeah.
I will say. You should check it out.
That's awesome. How can people get in touch with you, Tyler?
I'm on the website. Email is probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. Tyler.hart@commonwealthautism.org.
For your event coming up, are you looking for sponsors, things like that?
We
What
would
else?
love sponsors as we're 30 days out now, so
Yeah.
getting closer. So love for people to buy tickets. It's great food, and we're doing kind of a museum style this year where we'll have some of our graduates there telling their stories and helping with the event. So they'll help the chefs as well.
Nice.
Great.
Absolutely. Well, Tyler, we can't thank you enough for the time and the conversation.
You
We
guys
really
have made it
enjoyed it.
easy.
Yeah,
so
well,
thank you.
That's the goal. Taylor's good at what he does, for sure. But
Christian's okay.
yeah.
He's good. But yeah, Tyler, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. And yeah, please check out Commonwealth Autism. Check out Good Foods Grocery, everyone. This has been great. So Tyler, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler.